A new generation of consoles means more powerful hardware, which allows for games to run at a higher resolution, higher frame rates, have more detail, have more realistic environments, character models, and much more. But that isn't all it does. A better GPU, CPU, and RAM means more than most people think. And I'll get to that in a second. In this video, I'm going to explain how Nintendo could benefit from a hardware upgrade for the Nintendo Switch or an upgradable dock. Keep in mind, Nintendo has had almost all of their consoles to be upgradable. This includes home and handheld consoles. I know that some of you are thinking graphics don't matter, but I'm not talking about simply adding a more powerful dock or something to allow 4K and 60 frames per second. It's much more than that. I know better graphics don't always mean a better game. Personally, 16-bit and 8-bit games are still incredibly fun to play. I'd rather play A Link to the Past, Castlevania, Mega Man, or the original Ratchet & Clank than a new PS4 game with incredible graphics like The Order 1886. However, if a game at its core is fun to play, then increasing the resolution from 480p to 1080p or even 4K and increasing the frame rate from 20 frames, like most N64 games, to 60 frames, will take an already great experience and bring it to that next level. I'm sure you've heard people say stuff like there's no point of having a more powerful console, graphics don't matter, or making a classic game in HD is just a waste. That isn't what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about using the power in a new way. But even Nintendo, who have openly stated that they don't focus heavily on their console's power, are guilty of doing so. Also, I remember Reggie going on a daytime talk show when he was promoting the Wii U. It had first come out, and the PS4 and Xbox One were still unannounced. And what did Reggie do? A company that openly says they don't care about how powerful the console is? Well, during the interview, Reggie was bragging about how the Nintendo Wii U was the most powerful console on the market at that time. The truth is, if they didn't care about how powerful a console was, why even bother making their next generation of consoles more powerful at all? Why not save the money and put identical hardware that is found in the Wii U in the Switch? Instead, they doubled the RAM, added a better CPU and a GPU inside of it. Even with the 3DS line, they released the new 3DS, which was only slightly more powerful than the old 3DS. And I believe only a few games were exclusive to it, which made the concept of buying it make even less sense. If graphics didn't matter to Nintendo, why not take Xenoblade, which was an exclusive to the new 3DS, and lower the detail a bit so it could properly run on the old 3DS, instead of forcing people to buy a slightly more powerful and more expensive hardware to play it? The truth here is that while a powerful console does allow you to have better graphics, it also allows for much more that a lot of people never bother thinking about, and allows for developers to fully realize their ideas. One example is Kojima remaking Metal Gear. He said on the original hardware he wanted a scenario where you were needing to hide from an enemy, so you would go and hide under a desk and it would cause an intense or a nervous situation. However, it wasn't possible, so when newer, more powerful hardware came out, not only did the remake have better graphics, but it also allowed for his original vision to come to fruition. Another example is Nintendo cutting out a fan favorite character from Smash Bros. On the Wii U, because the character simply wasn't possible on the 3DS. Obviously, we're talking about ice climbers here. It wasn't a matter of having higher resolution or a higher frame rate, it was just that the engine and console simply couldn't allow it. And we have many other examples of this as well. Nintendo has actually made almost every single one of their consoles upgradable, or have released upgraded consoles in the past, so they could get around this. The Famicom or the NES for Japan had a disc system to allow for games to save, play better music, and have slightly better graphics. The Super Nintendo had the Satellaview online service, which basically gave you limited DLC and features you otherwise wouldn't have. The Nintendo 64 had the 64 disk drive, which would give you DLC, better graphics, and more memory for larger games. It also had the expansion pack that added more RAM and was required to play certain games like Majora's Mask. The GameCube even had several expansion slots on the bottom for internet and other things, but the most popular was how it allowed you to play the Game Boy Advance you otherwise wouldn't be able to. The Wii and Wii U had no upgradability, but this could all change with the Switch. The easiest thing to do here is to offer a dock that allows games to be played in a higher resolution, instead of buying a completely new console for $300 or $400. Nintendo could just release a new dock and charge you around $150 or $200. Then instead of games like Breath of the Wild being limited to 900p and 30 frames per second, perhaps we could render it in 4K and 60 frames per second, which realistically is completely unnecessary, but graphics, resolution, and frame rate aren't the only things a more powerful console allows us to do. Here's another example from Miyamoto. Back when Ocarina of Time was being developed, Nintendo didn't know how powerful the Nintendo 64 actually was. So at first, they designed the game to be similar to Mario 64, where it takes place entirely inside a castle, in this case, Ganon's castle. However, as they began working on the game, they realized they would be able to do a lot more than they originally planned. So instead of keeping us bound to a castle, they gave us an entire world to explore. The exact opposite of this, Miyamoto wanted Link to be able to swing his sword while riding on Epona. However, as simple as that sounds, it wasn't possible to do with the engine they had and the limited power of the Nintendo 64. That is why when Twilight Princess released, a huge part of the game is battling on horseback. Even the final boss fight has a section where you have horseback combat. The GameCube even had its setbacks as well though. The GameCube, which was even more powerful, had its setbacks as well with the Zelda series. With Wind Waker, they wanted the boat to originally go faster, but the GameCube couldn't render that fast, so they had to slow the boat's speed down because the boat would literally fall off the map, because the game couldn't render the ocean that far ahead of you. This was changed in the Wind Waker HD for the Wii U, and the boat was allowed to go faster with a new cell. The Wii, which was even more powerful than the GameCube, even had its limitations, which is why Skyward Sword had its classic art style. The game couldn't render objects that were too far ahead of you because of the poor draw distance, but instead of having the objects completely disappear and pop in and out, they allowed them to blend in with the background, which gave us this very unique painting art style. The Wii U and Switch, which are considerably more powerful, even have their own limitations as well. One of the best examples is how the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild is very plain while the Switch version has a farther draw distance, higher resolution, higher frame rate, but that isn't all. The Switch version also has other improvements such as more color, better lighting, faster load times, higher quality audio, and things like when the horses or animals move, you don't just hear the walking track being played. The hooves of the horse hitting the ground is actually what causes the sound, not the game telling the console, hey, he's on a horse moving, let's make horse sounds. The actual footsteps themselves is what's making the sound. Other companies outside of Nintendo like Sony and Microsoft have also talked about finally being able to do things on a newer console that they weren't able to do on the previous. Famously, The Last Guardian on PS3 was delayed for what seemed like an entire decade because of the trouble it had running on the PS3. The game, even though it wasn't that graphically intense, ran at somewhere between 10 and 15 frames per second. And whenever they showed the original PS3 trailer, they actually had to double the speed of it, so it would run at 30 frames per second, which is what it was meant to be doing in the first place. So when they brought the game over and development on the PS4 began, the game finally started making progress. When people hear about an upgraded GPU, CPU, RAM, or whatever, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, we'll have better graphics or a higher frame rate. But a more powerful console allows for much more than just visual improvements. As we've already went over, it allows for entire concepts, new gameplay mechanics, and the developer's own ideals to finally be realized. The higher resolution and frame rate is just icing on the cake. Going back to Nintendo, an upgradable dock could potentially allow for more than just a higher frame rate, or for the games to render in 4K, and that is why the Nintendo Switch needs to have an upgrade. Imagine what simple ideas could be brought to the table on more powerful hardware, similar to how the GameCube finally allowed Link to swing his sword on horseback. Imagine what unique ideals and gameplay experiences could be created if Nintendo had a console as powerful as the PS4 Pro or the upcoming Xbox Scorpio. Breath of the Wild is absolutely stunning, and it would have never been possible if Nintendo didn't release a console as powerful as the Wii U. So with the Switch, which is even more powerful, or an upgraded Nintendo Switch, imagine the possibilities Nintendo could bring. So what kind of ideas or concepts do you imagine Nintendo could come up with? Something I would like to see, if you remember back to Ocarina of Time, if the Deku Shield caught on fire, it would just burn up. But imagine taking it a step further and making it a bit more realistic. Let's say you have a metal shield, obviously not the Hylian shield since it's been looked at as unbreakable in past games, but as the shield takes more and more damage it cracks, or if the shield gets too hot, in this case if it's a metal shield being hit by lava, perhaps you actually see the shield itself starting to melt. Ideals and concepts like this that nobody really thinks about, something as simple as swinging your sword while riding on Epona. These were all things you were finally able to do with more powerful hardware. So let me know what kind of ideals you guys would like to see that more powerful hardware would finally allow. What's up everybody, really quick before we get to the usual end slate, I wanted to mention a quick update for this channel. I'm trying to bring together a few new series other than the usual discussions and news videos that we do. I would like to bring quality reviews, let's plays, do more live streams, a top 10 series, and more analysis videos. However, to do this I need your help. Between being a new father, YouTube, and my real job, I don't have the time to work on all of these videos. So I'd like to bring on other people who can help out from time to time, like Sasizi and others who have helped host and edit videos before. To make this all happen and to get awesome rewards for yourself, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can get shoutouts and videos, join our group Discord and chat with us whenever you want, be a guest on some of our videos, and much more. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would like to give a huge thank you to this month's Patreons for their support: George Martinez, Glenn Cassio, Hin Hutinen, Lunarium, Magic Tech Review, The Itch Network, and Harris Priest. Thank you all for everything, and it's because of your support that I'm able to find the time to do these videos. If you would also like to support this channel, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can find all kinds of great rewards like joining on a video, being added onto our Discord chat, having your discussion or topic featured on one of our videos, and much more, including having your own custom artwork similar to my own, drawn of you in any anime or video game style you would like. Finally, I would like to give a huge thank you to Gnomo Designs and CS Guitar 89 for providing the music and artwork for this channel.